Okay. So today we're going to look at the right of redemption versus the usurper of those rights. Because Yahusha had much to accomplish as his ministry commenced as the Lamb of Elohim. And we know that's important to distinguish because even at age 12, he was ministering to people. But at the time of his immersion and at the time of John the Immerser identifying him to his disciples as the Lamb of Elohim, at that significant point, began his ministry as the Lamb. And so that's something that most people do not get and do not realize, because that really determines how long his earthly ministry as the Lamb could be. So we all know when we first believed in Jesus of Nazareth as we knew him back then, we gave little thought to all the details he needed to fulfill, because he was not only becoming our kinsman redeemer, but also our sacrificial lamb, a perfect male lamb, could be 1 year of age, but not two. He was also becoming our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. He was also ushering in the new covenant, our very marriage covenant. He was proposing to us his bride. So, you know, when we first were introduced to Jesus of Nazareth, and we know of his healings, we know of his walk, we know the various events, but we never really dug deeply into all the righteous legal transactions he had to make. You know, he had all this other stuff going on in his mind. He had to be very alert every day, not to miss something, not and to do everything according to the book of the law, because he was born under the book of the law and he was ushering in the new covenant and ushering us back to covenant Torah. And we talked about how important that was in knowing how to rightly divide his word of truth last week. So we're covering a lot of ground and we're covering it in depth. And so as we mature in him, we honestly stand in awe of all that he accomplished and the battles he won against the adversary. And they popped up almost every day, but he dealt with them. Even within his inner family, he had to deal with various attacks. Today's session is called The Right of Redemption versus the Usurper of those rights. The question posed is, who is worthy to open the scroll of redemption? We know that question pops up in Revelation 5, don't we? And it seemed like no one was stepping forward. And we remember that John the Revelator, and John the Revelator is different than John the Immerser. We realized, you know, it was very upsetting because no one was stepping forward. And eventually he's told, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome to open the scroll and its 7 seals. So that follows with the answer to the second question: who has a legal right to open the scroll of redemption? Who was worthy? I mean, this was huge. I mean, this very question was posed in Revelation 5. The right of redemption. If we did not have a kinsman redeemer, where would we be? I hate to even think about it. So what does the noun usurper mean? It means one who usurps, especially one who seizes illegally on sovereign or kingly power. The usurper of a throne. Starting to sound familiar? What the adversary is trying to do? A usurper of power. A usurper of the rights of a patron. It identifies one who usurps, one who wrongfully or illegally seizes and holds the place of another. Now we know Yahusha, Jesus of Nazareth, is our kinsman redeemer. To be a kinsman redeemer, one must be a kinsman. And we know Yahusha's genealogy is validated in Matthew chapter 1. We know Joseph was Yahusha's surrogate father, was from the tribe of Judah. That was extremely important. This made Yahusha from the tribe of Judah as well. Even though Joseph was his surrogate father, Joseph was his father, and that was the relationship that Yahusha had with him on earth. And the father always determined what tribe they would be under. Therefore, he was under the tribe of Judah as well. And he was also from the root of David. In Genesis 49:10, we read, "The scepter, the rulership, shall not turn aside from Judah, nor an inscriber from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of peoples." And of course, that pointed to Yahusha HaMashiach, King of Kings, and our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. In 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 2, we know the roles of Judah and we know the role of Joseph. For Judah prevailed over his brothers, and from him came a ruler, Yahusha HaMashiach, although the birthright was Joseph's. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. That's his goal each and every day. That is his goal. Satan works through beast kingdoms and specializes in usurping power over Israel, Yahweh's firstborn, those of us born from above. Satan wants to occupy the promised land. He does this through lies and deceit and works through those willing to sell their soul to him. Thus far, how I see it, the beast kingdoms to date have been Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, the Roman Empire, and today the present occupants. And I won't go too much into that. So that makes 7 right there. That makes 7. Yet there's to be an 8th. And we read about that 8th beast kingdom in Revelation 17:11. It reads, "And the beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th." So one out of those 7 I mentioned earlier will also become the 8th and is of the 7 and goes to destruction. We're right there. We are right there because the 7th beast, according to what I have studied, you may differ from me, is already existing presently in occupying that promised land. So I believe that beast kingdom, that will be the eighth one, will be the one that is referred to and called the Assyrian in the book of Revelation. So eschatology is eschatology. We may not be perfectly correct in all of our insights, but probably the Assyrian will descend from the eastern leg of the Roman Empire. Because remember, there was a western leg, more of the Catholicism side, and the eastern leg, more like the Ottoman Empire and so forth and so on. So we have to keep all of that in our mind. And of course, presently we're at the feet of Nebuchadnezzar's statue. So from the very beginning, Satan usurped the dominion over the earth from Adam and Eve and passed his evil scepter of control to Nimrod, which was then passed down through beast kingdoms. Simultaneously, though, don't forget, Yahweh implemented his line of righteousness through the Melchizedek preachers of righteousness from the very beginning. He started with Adam. So this over time evolved through the ongoing battle between Esau and Jacob. And Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So Israel is born from above. He is the one new man rising. And Esau is the beast man rising. Now, we are born in this world and we search and seek for Yahusha HaMashiach, our Savior. That means that anyone that has not known Yahusha HaMashiach yet would be of this world, more of the beast man rising, the beast kingdom, because we actually live in Mystery Babylon. We actually live in Egypt. We live in a world that does not follow Yahweh's word. So automatically that kind of puts us at the beginning in the camp of Esau, the beast man rising, because the Satan is the prince and power of the air. And that's what we were surrounded with until we found Yahusha HaMashiach. And the one new man is rising. And to become part of Israel born from above, which is the true biblical Israel, we must make that transition to knowing him through his word. Because no one can come to the Father except through the Son. Period. No one can come to the Father except through the Son. It doesn't matter if you're connected to one of the 12 tribes. Since Yahusha came and has given us the new covenant and has proposed to us, each and every one of us that come to him must accept that proposal and partake in his covenant confirming meal and be washed by the blood of the Lamb. So we see Satan is also described as a lion, right? He's a counterfeiter, right? But he is the lion that prowls around seeking someone to devour. And Yahweh is intimately aware of Satan's role as a usurper. Satan is a liar, and he's the father of lies. He's very good at it, isn't he? He uses identity theft to lead the masses astray, and he is doing quite a number on the masses to this day. And we are the final remnant. He flips the script. He flips definitions, such as the term and name Israel. He redefines Israel. Or Jew. Where did that term Jew come from? And he defines things as he wants them defined, and he defines things as he wants the masses to understand. He embeds cultural holidays, does he not? On almost every continent, he embeds cultural holidays to usurp the praise and worship from Yahweh to little g gods. He's very crafty. He even usurps the Sabbath. That's Yahweh's set apart day of worship. And in Isaiah 14:14, we hear the words from Satan saying, "Let me go up to the heavens. Let me raise my throne above the stars of El, and let me sit in the mount of appointment on the sides of the north. Let me go up above the heights of the clouds. Let me be like the Most High." It's very evident he is the adversary. He is the usurper. So today we will see that. And this is awesome because most of the time we think it's all about us. Well, it's not, but this will kind of widen our horizon. Today we will see that Yahusha, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Lamb of Elohim that was slain, was fully qualified to not only redeem us, his bride, but also the land and also his creation. And that is beautifully laid out in Revelation 5. And today we're going to make a connection with Jeremiah chapter 32. We're going to focus on Jeremiah's land transaction. There's a lot of details that he had to meet under the law. And Yahusha would adhere to those details as well in order to complete his redemptive land transactions and qualify as our kinsman redeemer. Yahusha was focused on fulfilling all righteousness. It would be extremely difficult and extremely painful, and he had a set amount of time to fulfill the messianic prophecies spoken of him. There was so much he was doing in the background that we missed. But praise Yah, over time, we're appreciating and understanding all that he had to go through to redeem us. So today, we're on this series. I'm just highlighting some key points and events that we may have just kind of brushed over in the past, and many of these insights I received through Tour to the Tribes Ministries with Matthew Nolan, how he dug into the scriptures and how he connected the dots for us and how he helped expand our knowledge of his word and how to rightly divide his word of truth so we would interpret scriptures correctly. It's just amazing. So in this series of highlights that I've looked at, we have established the difference between building on faulty foundations versus the rock of our salvation. And we know that faulty foundations that seem firm will start to crumble with time. And actually, that's what we experienced, did we not? We were in the traditional church setting, and I'm not trying to bash the church. It does serve a role to introduce Jesus of Nazareth to the masses. But at the same time, it would be extremely beneficial if they would at least also shift to his feast days and to his Sabbaths and at least instruct the masses about what his feast days are. They are our very wedding rehearsals. So once we started seeing some cracks in our foundation, because we're all responsible for our own foundation because we have his word today. And, when we have a faulty foundation, we look at the point where it's cracking and we go and we go, oh, I need to kind of correct that. Oh, the Sabbath is the seventh day. It's not the first day of the week. Okay, I can correct that. Oh, okay. So cultural holidays, even though they're celebrated in the traditional church setting, that's really not what I'm supposed to be celebrating. and we discover his feast days and the beauty of his feast days, and there are wedding rehearsals, and we learn that he acts and moves on his feast days. This is huge, and you can see why the enemy wanted to usurp those. So we went over that. And we have revealed that the immersion of Yahusha by John was the commencement of the priestly transference and elevation back to the order of Melchizedek from the Aaronic Levitical order. Extremely important to understand priesthoods, because depending on what priesthood is reigning determines what law is administered, the book of the law or the book of the covenant. We read after the immersion that John identifies Yahusha as, behold, the Lamb of Elohim. Thus, Yahusha's earthly ministry as a lamb began at that point, extremely important. His ministry would last for 490 days from water immersion to fire immersion at Pentecost. Exodus 12 validates that the perfect Passover lamb was to be a 1-year-old male, but before age 2. And of course, that appears in Covenant Torah. Otherwise, he would be disqualified. Extremely important. So you see how focused Yahusha had to be in fulfilling every jot and tittle. Yahusha was very focused on fulfilling all righteousness under the book of the law, because that's what he was born under. He had to fulfill that because he was ushering in covenant Torah, a new covenant. But he had to fulfill every jot and tittle under the book of the law in order not to disqualify himself as our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. This was phenomenal when Matthew brought this to light for us. It made so much sense, and very few understand this point. And if you have a desire to know him more deeply, you will appreciate these points that we have come to understand. And the point I'm about to say is that Yahusha actually served as the high priest over his own crucifixion. Why? That's like, wow, he did? Yes. Why? Because Caiaphas disqualified himself by tearing his priestly garment. And that was breaking the book of the law, the stipulations under the book of the law. We see this take place of why Caiaphas tore his garment in Matthew chapter 26. I'm going to read starting at verse 63. This is not on your screen. But Yahusha remained silent before Caiaphas. So the high priest said to him, I put you to oath. That was significant, and most of us missed it, including myself. I put you to oath by the living Elohim that you say to us, if you are the Messiah, the Son of Elohim. And Yahusha responded to Caiaphas. He said, you have said it. Besides, I say to you, from now on, you shall see the Son of Adam sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of the heaven. And at that point, Caiaphas screamed out, blasphemy, you all heard it. And he rips his priestly garment, which disqualified him as high priest under the book of the law. And the point of the book of the law that he violated was Leviticus chapter 5, verse 1. And it reads, and when a being sins in that he has heard the voice of swearing and is a witness, or has seen, or has known, but does not reveal it, he shall bear his crookedness. That's why it wasn't good enough for Caiaphas just to ask him, you are the Messiah, you say to us, if you are the Messiah, the son of Elohim. That wasn't good enough. Yahusha had to verbalize it. And that's why he said, you have said it, speaking to Caiaphas, besides, I say to you, from now on, you shall see the Son of Adam sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of the heaven. So he himself had to verbalize that. I mean, just one instance, he had to do it properly, or Yahusha would have been disqualified. We also know that Yahusha was the Word made manifest. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Therefore, he does not lie. Wide is the path that leads to destruction, and narrow is the path that leads to life. So after the commencement of the priestly transference, his focus was on righteously and legally completing the rite of redemption transaction as described in Jeremiah 32. So every day he was focused and alert. So next we're going to listen to a clip by Toward to the Tribes with Matthew Nolan, making these comparisons to Jeremiah 32, and then I'm going to continue to expand on those insights.
Jeremiah chapter 32 and the 6th verse. And Jeremiah 32 verse 6. And Jeremiah said, the word of Yahweh came to me saying, see, Hanalel, that means grace of El, the son of Chalam. That means to be fully recompensed or restore. Your uncle shall come to you saying, buy my field that is in Anatoth. That means to answer through prayer. For the right of redemption is yours to buy it. So Hananel, my uncle's son, came to me in the court of the guard according to the word of Yahweh and said to me, buy my field, I ask you, that is in Anatoth. That's a city of refuge, by the way, which is in the country of Benjamin. For the right of inheritance is yours, and the redemption, it's yours. Buy it for yourself. Then I knew that this was the word of Yahweh. And I bought the field of Hanalel, my uncle's son, that was in Anatoth, and weighed for him the silver, 17 shekels of silver. Silver is the currency of man's redemption. Joseph spent 17 years in Egypt. Jerusalem is in the Psalms 17 times. In Romans chapter 8, there's 17 things that are unable to separate you from Yahweh. And he said, and I signed the deed and sealed it, and I took witnesses and weighed the silver in the scales. And I took the deed of the purchase, both that which was sealed according to the Torah and the custom, and that which was open. You see, right now, what you're seeing is that there was two ways in the Torah to seal a scroll. The way that Jeremiah is explaining it to us is that you would have a sheepskin and that you would punch 2 holes in the center of it. You would write the contract on the lower half, and you would roll it up, and you would tie it through the strings that went through the center hole, and it would be sealed. And then the top flap would have the abridged version of the contract, and it would be stuffed away in a clay jar, and you would pull it out. You could read what was within the sealed covenant without breaking it on the top flap. This is what happened right here. It goes on to say, and I signed the deal and sealed it and took witnesses and weighed the silver in the scales. So I took the deed of purchase, both that which was sealed, the lower half, according to the Torah and custom, and that which was open, the top half, with the abridged version and reference. And I gave the deed of the purchase to Baruch, the son of Neriyahu, the son of Masiah, in the sight of Hanael, my uncle's son, and in the presence of the witnesses that signed the deed of the purchase, before all the Yahudim that sat in the court of the guard. And I," now there's the Aleph Tav that appears here, very interesting, "commanded Baruch before them, saying, This says Yahweh Savot, the Elohim of Israel, take these deeds, this deeds of the purchase, both which is sealed and the deed which is open, and put them," where? "In an earthen vessel, that they may remain for many days." That means for a future fulfillment. This is huge, just in case you're switched off. This is huge. He's going to take the sealed deed and he's going to put it in what's called a bikli chares, an earthen vessel, the same word that is used for a carpenter, a worker of wood, is going to house the land redemption contract. Someone who shapes wood, an earthen vessel, a bikli chares. The stone vessel must be broken to expose the transaction. Anybody with me? The earthen vessel, the carpenter, the bikli chares, must be broken to expose the transaction and has the right to redemption. In 2 Corinthians 4:7 it says, "But we have this treasure in bikli chares, earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be from Yahweh, not from us." Then in verse 15 it says, "For this says Yahweh Savot, the Elohim of Israel, houses and vineyards, houses and fields and vineyards shall be possessed again in the land. Now when I had delivered the deed of the purchase to Baruch the son of Neriah, I made tefillah, prayer to Yahweh, saying, O Master Yahweh." Now this is the same prayer, by the way, as in the book of Revelation. Remember Yochanan, John was weeping, and he was weeping about what? He could find nobody that could open the seal, and it was sealed 7 times. That was sealed according to the other Torah custom, where it was fully rolled up, and then it was sealed with 7 seals in the book of Revelation, and then the abridged version is written on the outside, and it is housed in a bikli chares. So there was 2 customs. The one in Jeremiah, you have the open flap, 2 punched holes tied with a string, 7 seals. The one in the book of Revelation, the whole thing's written up, sealed, and there's the abridged version on the outside. But you have to have the rights to break the seals. You have got to be broken before the seal and transaction can be exposed, because those earthen vessels were the perfect fit for the covenantal seal. Then it goes on to say, "Show your loving kindness to thousands, and you repay the iniquity of the avot, the fathers, into the bosom of the children after them. The great and mighty El, Yahweh Savot is his name." This is how it all plays out in our life. Because we know within the Brit Hadashah that agriculture is analogous with us, right? It's all about wheat and tares and reaping and sowing. And the word is displayed in agricultural parables. And in Leviticus 25 verse 23 it says, "The land is mine." But Yahweh gave the land to who? To Adam, to guard it. But Adam failed to guard it, and it gave entrance to Satan. And then in Leviticus 25 verse 10, at the Jubilee, it says, "You shall return to your possession," which is the Garden of Eden, "and return to your family," which is the flock of Jacob. So you can redeem it back. We're supposed to redeem this back before the Jubilee, or in the Jubilee year, the possession is going to be released. And that, brethren, is where we're at. And Yeshua speaks about this to us, but we don't understand, because remember how I began today's teaching. I asked you a question. What do you think of when I talk about the world? We've been programmed to think about globally the earth. And it's the dilution of the gospel. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. Oh, it's universalism. God, no, he doesn't. What do you mean? How can you say that? For God so loved, we don't understand what the writer of Scripture is saying. Therefore, we don't understand what Yeshua is saying. Because in John 3:16, for God so loved the world. But in Matthew 13, verse 37, the world is defined. The world is defined for us. It's not global. What is it? The world is the field. In Matthew 13, verse 37. It means this or that to me. No, the world means the field. For Yahweh so loved the field that he sent his one and only son. Why? Because he gives a rip about the field? He doesn't give a rip about the field. He buys the field because he wants the rights to do whatever he wants to the field. Because he's going to come in that field and he is going to put a sickle harvest on that field. And he is going to go in that field and he is going to tear it down. He is going to gather all those tares together and he is going to burn them. Because he's looking for something and he's got to clean that field up first so he can find what is buried within the field. In Matthew 13, verse 44, Yeshua redeems the field. Why? Yeshua redeems the field so it doesn't pass out of the family. That's so important. Yeshua redeems the field because he doesn't want the field to pass out of the family. Just like Boaz and Ruth, just like we see here in Jeremiah in the 32nd chapter, it's all about making sure it stays within the house of Jacob, the flock of Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And yes, we're working backwards, but we're working back into that family. He doesn't want it to pass out of the family. It's the law of redemption. The next of kin is to redeem it back. Adam gave away our inheritance, and Moshiach purchases the field, the world. It's not that everything in the field is redeemed, but the field is. The owner can do whatever he wants with the field. The sickle harvest of Revelation 14, verse 14, happens after the law of redemption scroll is opened in Revelation chapter 5. There's tares, there's wheat, but Yeshua has to pay the full purchase price for the field to gain the treasure in it. And Psalm 135 verse 4 says, for Yahweh has chosen Yaakov for himself, Israel for his special treasure. Yahweh's people weren't rescued without cost. He doesn't give a rip about the field. He gives a rip about you that have been buried in the field out here in the nations. And if he has to die to purchase the field so he can sickle harvest it and gather you guys and get you out because you're his treasure, he'll do it. For God so loved the hippy-dippy world. Give me a break, you universalist nut. That's the way it's going out there. I'm sorry, I get crazy at times. It's the passion of the word of Yahweh in me. I'm sorry. I'm not, though. It's serious business. In Revelation 12, in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2, in John 14:30, Satan is the ruler of the world. Satan owns the field. He's the prince of the air. 1 John 4:4, he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. We have overcome. We have overcome. Luke chapter 2, verse 38. The words of the Neviah Anna, the prophetess Anna, she spoke of him to all those who looked for the redemption of Jerusalem. Luke 1:67, Zechariah's prophecy, Baruch atah Yahweh Elohim of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people. And Psalm 25, verse 22, we see the psalmist's words fulfilled. Redeem Israel and Yahweh out of her troubles. So the transaction that happens, it's called in the Hebrew, Mishpat ha-gelulah, the purchase procedure of redemption. After the legal rights of purchase are acknowledged, when were the legal rights of purchase acknowledged? The genealogy of Matthew chapter 1. Yeshua now, his legal rights are acknowledged. He has the right to purchase the field, which is the world. The buyer purchased the land by weighing out silver. 1 Corinthians 6:20, for you were bought at a price. Glorify Yahweh in your body and Ruach, which are Elohim's. We're to live a set-apart life. Then there is a bill of sale that is written up. That happened in John 18 and Matthew 26. How do you think that Judas Iscariot got a detachment of troops? You just can't go up to Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin and say, hey, you got a detachment of troops for me. There has to be a bill of sale, a contractual agreement for a release of a detachment of troops. And it doesn't happen without a bill of sale, and it doesn't happen without silver. Then the deed needs to be sealed. And how was that deed sealed? With a kiss. And it was sealed. And then it has to be properly notarized by witnesses. And when did that happen? We'll take Barabbas, they said.
But what would be very beneficial is for, after we go through the session, is to go to Jeremiah 32 and read it from beginning to end. It is full of information and the process that was taking place. And it also goes into the future prophecy of when he returns the second time. So thus the process of Jeremiah purchasing the field begins. He's obeying what Yahweh told him to do. And even though at that point, Jeremiah, he was confused, since prophetically, Jeremiah was a prophet. And Yahweh had already told him that Babylon was going to conquer Jerusalem. So Jeremiah is scratching his head like, whoa, what, you're going to want me to purchase this field? I mean, he knows the devastation coming to the land. But that was exactly what Yahusha wanted him to do, because it laid out the foundation of not only the process he was doing then, but what Yahusha would be doing in the future. So let me share screen again and get back on the PowerPoint. So the transaction required is fully met by Yahusha according to the command and law, and met all the conditions as prophetically laid out in Jeremiah. And the lower half of Jeremiah 32 talks more prophetically about what would take place in the future. So at the beginning, though, in Jeremiah 32, verse 6 and 7 that Matthew read, it says, and Jeremiah said, the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, see, Hanamael, son of Shallum, your uncle, is coming to you saying, buy my field, which is Anatoth, for the right of redemption is yours to buy it. And lo and behold, as you continue reading Jeremiah 32, Hanamael, son of Shalom, his uncle, did come. And so Jeremiah knew that that was confirmation that he was from Yahweh. Now, as for Yahusha, once his ministry began as the Lamb of Elohim, he too was completing the transaction to purchase the field, and praise Yah, he was successful. And like I shared, that's recorded in Revelation 5:1 through verse 5:5. It reads, and I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, having been sealed with seven seals, and those seals would have to be broken. And I saw a strong messenger proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and to loosen its seals? And no one in the heaven or on the earth or, excuse me, or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. They couldn't even look at it. That was really bad. And I wept much because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. And one of the elders said to me, do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, overcame to open the scroll and to loosen its seven seals. So hallelujah to that. But honestly, I never saw Revelation 5, all the transactional elements in Revelation 5 that was taking place. Nor during the time in the Gospels did I understand this, all the details of all the various transactions. So there are earthly transactions between mankind made with silver and gold. We see that. And there are divine transactions that take place in the supernatural. Both are purchased with a price, correct? And Satan was working double time through the flesh of men to eliminate the threat of losing his position and power. He was making his own transactions. We saw that with Judas Iscariot, did we not? And at the same time, Yahusha was fulfilling every jot and tittle under the book of the law to carry out his divine transaction here on earth. There was a huge, huge battle going on. And the usurper is always at work. He prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may destroy, to devour, to devour. So some of the earthly transactions between mankind we read in some of these verses, like Jeremiah 32:9. And I bought the field which was at Anatoth from Hanamael, my uncle's son, and weighed out to him the silver, 17 shekels of silver. So that was a transaction ordained by Yahweh, and Jeremiah followed through on that transaction at Yahweh's instructions. So he was obedient. In Matthew 26:14, this is another side of the coin, if you will, on the other transactions that were taking place. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest and said, what would you give me to deliver him to you? And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. And from then on, he, Judas, was seeking an occasion to deliver him up. So he had made an unholy alliance with the chief priest. He had sold Yahusha out, and silver was exchanged. The transaction was made, even though we remember, right? I mean, Judas down the line, he has guilt, he has regret, he grieves, and he goes back, he tries to give them their money, and they didn't want to have anything to do with them. What is that to them? He said. They said, I'm paraphrasing, but you remember that event in the Bible. And that tells you a whole lot about the so-called priest in the temple, does it not? I mean, if someone is coming and trying to repent, they should be comforted. They should be spoken to. They should have the way pointed out to them. But those priests, they were like, you did just what we wanted you to do. And what do we have to do with you now? And they end up buying the field of blood because it was blood money. So that was a unholy transaction. And then in Genesis 37, verse 28, we read about the time that Joseph is sold by his brothers. And men, Midianite traders, passed by, so they pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. So here again, they made an unholy transaction there. And then we saw a Kinsman Redeemer transaction on the good side of things that was divinely ordained by Yahweh and is in his genealogy in Matthew chapter 1, where we read in Ruth chapter 4, verse 5 through 10, and Boaz said, on the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you shall also acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead on his inheritance. And the Redeemer said, I am not able to redeem it for myself, lest I ruin my own inheritance. Redeem my right of redemption for yourself. He's speaking to Boaz. Redeem my right of redemption for yourself, for I am not able to redeem it. And this was formally done. It was done accurately and righteously and according to the book of the law. And this was formally done in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm every word. One man took off his sandal and gave it to the other. And this was a witness in Israel. That's how they made those transactions in that time period. So the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself. Then he took off his sandal, and Boaz said to the elders and to all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's from the hand of Naomi, and also Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon. Then we read in 1 Peter chapter 1, 17 through 21. Peter wrote, and if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear, knowing that you were redeemed from your futile behavior inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, as a lamb unblemished and spotless. So that lamb met all the criteria foreknown, indeed, before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, who through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in him. So, I mean, Matthew hit so much in that short clip, and I pray that what I'm elaborating on brings it home to convey understanding of all that was taking place transactionally, not only divine transactions, but unholy transactions. So Matthew also said there would be a bill of sale, or in Jeremiah 32, it's stated as the deed of purchase. And that was evident in Jeremiah 32:14, where we read, thus said Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, take these deeds, both this deed of purchase which is sealed, and this deed which is open. And Matthew described how they sealed those deeds at that time and put them in an earthen vessel so that they remain many days. For thus said Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, houses and fields and vineyards shall again be bought in this land. So that's a prophetic statement right there. And we also see the deed of purchase, the evil deed of purchase, evident by Judas, who was making that evil transaction, as he was given a band of men and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees to retrieve Yahusha. They wanted him to do the dirty work, but it was evident because they gave him access to the officers and a band of men to go with him. So that shows that Judas had given them, that he had received the silver, and so the transaction was going. He was tied to the process at that point. And then we also see the deed of purchase evident by the line of the tribe of Judah in Revelation 5:1. And I saw on the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, having been sealed with 7 seals. And in verse 5b, it says, do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, overcame to open the scroll and to loosen its 7 seals. So very much like Jeremiah questioned, like, you know, Yahweh, will you explain to me why you want me to buy this field? I know Babylon is going to come and conquer this region. Why do you want me to buy this field? You know, but and at the same time, what Matthew was sharing, that Yahweh so loved the world that, you know, and he identified it as the field. So he's coming for his own. He's redeeming his bride, the land, and creation in the field. But there is yet a process that will take place in the greater tribulation time where there will be much destruction. But he sent us out to look at the field. He said, look at the field. See, it is white for harvest. Go and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh, teaching them all that I have commanded you. Oh, that was an important phrase. All that I have commanded you. And in order to do that, you need to know how to rightly divide his word of truth. That's why I have pounded that topic endlessly and will continue to pound that topic endlessly, because most people do not know how to rightly divide his word of truth. I think that was one tactic used by the enemy. Then Matthew went on to talk about deeds sealed with a kiss. Now that's how Judas was going to signal to the men and the soldiers that his dirty deed was done. Matthew 26:47. And while he was still speaking, see, Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, with a large crowd with swords and clubs, came to the chief priests and elders of the people, and he who was delivering him up gave them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, it is he. Seize him. That was his dirty deed, and he sealed it with a kiss. Jeremiah, in the process of being obedient to Yahweh in Jeremiah 32, you see the other side of a holy transaction directed by Yahweh. And I signed the deed and sealed it, took witnesses and weighed the silver in the scales. So praise Yah that with all the evil transactions being made against Yahusha, he prevails. Revelation 5:1, and I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, having been sealed with 7 seals. Then the transaction had to be notarized. It had to be notarized. And Yahusha's transaction was notarized in Pilate's court in John 18:33 through 37. Then Pilate went back into the palace and called Yahusha and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews of the Yehudim?" And Yahusha answered him, "Do you say this from yourself, or did others talk to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Yehudi? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What did you do?" And Yahusha answered, "My reign is not of this world. If my reign were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Yehudim. But now my reign is not from here." Then Pilate said to him, "You are a sovereign then." Yahusha answered, "You say it because I am a sovereign," in other words, a king. "For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Likewise, in Jeremiah 32, in completing his transaction, records in verse 8, "So Hananiah, my uncle's son, came to me in the court of the guard according to the word of Yahweh, and said to me, Please buy my field that is in Anatoth, which is in the land of Benjamin, for the right of inheritance is yours, and the redemption is yours. Buy it for yourself." And then Jeremiah said, "And I knew that this was the word of Yahweh." So in essence, Yahweh's notary stamp was placed on this event because he told Jeremiah beforehand. Then we have the public transference, where they chose Barabbas in John 18:38. And I hope you all watched that video that we did not too long ago. It's gained a lot of traction on BitChute, more so than YouTube, because my YouTube channel has had so many strikes against it. They pretty much buried it, but it is good and good traction on BitChute. And it's very important to set aside time to listen to that teaching from beginning to end, to fully understand, who do you worship? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus the Messiah? So I recommend that. So in John 18:38, Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Yehudim and said to them, "I find no guilt in him. But you have a habit that I shall release someone to you at the Passover. Do you wish then that I release to you the king of the Yehudim, the king of the Jews?" Then they all shouted again, saying, "Not this one, but Barabbas." And Barabbas was a robber. So you kind of know who his father was. Satan is a thief. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Yet in Jeremiah 32:12, we read, "And I gave the deed of purchase to Baruch, son of Neriah, son of Messiah, in the presence of Hananiah, my uncle's son, and in the presence of the witnesses who signed the deed of purchase before all the Yehudim who sat in the court of the guard." So Jeremiah carried that process out with multiple witnesses who also signed the deed. It was all done legally according under the book of the law. Yahusha became accursed and shed his blood for redemption. Hebrews 9:11 through 12. But Messiah, having become a high priest of the coming good matters through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, entered into the most set apart place once for all, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, having obtained everlasting redemption. Of course, we never saw that. He was cleansing the heavenly items. And in Jeremiah 32:10, Jeremiah wrote, "And I signed the deed and sealed it, took witnesses and weighed the silver in the scales." In Hebrews chapter 9, 19 through 28, we get more insight. So we're going to do a comparison back to the days of Moses here. For when, according to Torah, every command had been spoken by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people. And we, of course, know that many of those elements were there when Yahusha HaMashiach hung on the crucifixion tree. Verse 20, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant which Elohim commanded you." And in the same way, he sprinkled with blood both the tent and all the vessels of the service. And according to the Torah, almost all is cleansed with blood, and without shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. It was necessary then that the copies of the heavenly ones should be cleansed with these, but the heavenly ones themselves with better slaughter offerings than these. For Messiah has not entered into a set apart place made with hand, figures of the true. I mean, what is in the heavenlies is the original. What Moses followed in making the tabernacle in the wilderness, that was the shadow. And the processes that he carried out were a shadow of what was taking place in the heavenlies. For Messiah has not entered a set apart place made by hand, figures of the true, but into the heaven itself, not now to appear in the presence of Elohim on our behalf. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priest enters into the set apart place year by year with blood not his own, for if so, he would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now he has appeared once for all at the end of the age to put away sin by the offering of himself. And as it awaits men to die once, and after this, the judgment, so also the Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, shall appear a second time apart from sin to those waiting for him unto deliverance. And that is what we wait for, his second coming. The deed would then be sealed and placed in an earthen vessel. John 19:28. After this, Yahusha, knowing that all had been accomplished, see, he knew all had been accomplished, in order that the scripture might be accomplished, said, "I thirst." A bowl of sour wine stood there, and they filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on hyssop, and held it to his mouth. So when Yahusha took the sour wine, he said, "It has been accomplished." And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. Jeremiah 32, likewise in verse 14, thus said Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, take these deeds, both this deed of purchase, which is sealed, and this deed which is open, and put them in an earthen vessel, so that they remain many days. So that full transaction is recorded in Jeremiah 32. And lastly, in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 7, and we have this treasure in earthen vessels, so that the excellence of the power might be of Elohim and not of us. being hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, being perplexed, but not in despair, being persecuted, but not forsaken, being thrown down, but not destroyed, always bearing about in the body the dying of the Master Yahusha, that the life of Yahusha might also be manifested in our body. Jeremiah 32:15, and I want to get into some of the lower half of Jeremiah 32 that is more prophetic. But in verse 15 it said, "For thus said Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, houses and fields and vineyards shall again be brought in this land." And we will see that one day. Verse 37, "See, I am gathering them out of all the lands where I have driven them in my displeasure and in my wrath and in great rage, and I shall bring them back to this place and shall let them dwell in safety." This has not taken place yet. So that tells us that's what has taken place in the Middle East is not this Israel born from above brought back to the promised land, because it says that Yahweh shall bring them back to this place and shall let them dwell in safety. Are we there yet? Because we are part of Israel born from above, okay? But here again, Satan has flipped the script. Most people cannot define true biblical Israel. They think it's the place named Israel through an earthly transaction. Okay? All right. Verse 38. "And they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim, and I shall give them one heart and one way to fear me all the days for the good of them and of their children after them. And I shall make an everlasting covenant with them that I do not turn back from doing good to them. And I shall put my fear in their hearts so as not to turn aside from me. And I shall rejoice over them to do good to them, and shall plant them in this land in truth with all my heart and with all my being. For thus said Yahweh, as I have brought all this great evil on this people, so I am bringing on them all the good that I am speaking to them." So I pray that brought more clarity to the depth of this transaction that is mirrored by the structure in Jeremiah 32 and all that Yahusha was mindful of to fulfill all righteousness and to be our kinsman redeemer. Shabbat Shalom.